Hi, my name is Callie, and I'm going to do my reflection vlog on the persuasive speech. The first question was, what was the goal of the persuasive speech? And that was to convince my audience about what I was talking about and let them know that I had a good support about my topic, and that I did enough research on my topic to literally try to persuade them and make sure that I gave them good pointers about my topic so that I can try to persuade them about what I was talking about, which was breastfeeding. The next question was, how did I feel going in? And honestly, I felt really nervous. Before I started performing my speech, I felt very well prepared. I stood in front of a mirror and performed to myself, and I knew everything that I was talking about. I knew what the order was, and then once I got in front of my audience, who was my three best friends, I just froze up, and it didn't go as well, but I still think it went pretty good. What did I do to make sure my speaker ethos was high? I made sure that I did a bunch of research on my topic and knew exactly what I was talking about. I got 3 really good main points through my research, and when you're doing a persuasive speech, you literally have to try to persuade your audience to go on your side or to agree about what you're talking about. So I made sure to share facts, but positive facts, to support why breastfeeding is better for the baby. The next one was if my technology was adequately prepared, and I think my technology was. This time I made sure that my lighting was better on my face and not my audience, like my last speech. It was kind of hard to make sure that all 3 points I stayed in the video because I do live in a smaller space, so I had to make sure that when I was moving from side to side that I stayed in and that you could still see my body language. I've seen many different ways that students have done their speeches, so the next time I think I can even make it clearer on my face, and so it's focused more on me and not necessarily my audience. My element of structure and organization felt normal and what felt odd to me. The biggest thing that I think felt normal to me was my introduction and my conclusion, because I knew exactly what I was talking about. I knew what my thesis was, what my 3 main points were, and I felt very confident when I was talking about those 3 main points. Also, during my introduction and conclusion, I asked questions to my audience, and I knew what those questions were going to be, and I think it helped that my audience was 3 girls, and so talking about breastfeeding is more of a conversation and not I was standing up there performing in front of them. The thing that felt odd to me was the 3 main points when we had to step from side to side for each different point. I've never done that before, so it felt kind of awkward at first, especially when my audience wasn't expecting what I was doing. So when I moved side to side, they kind of looked at me like, what is she doing? So I feel like I should have told them what it was going to be like before I started, but it worked out. The next question was, how did I consider my audience when developing my speech? When considering my audience, I made sure that I wanted to perform in front of females, because I knew that if I was going to do it in front of males about breastfeeding, they'd sit there why are you talking to me about this? Yes, it could benefit a male too, because they have wives and they can help their wife decide on breastfeeding their child, but I knew that I would have more impact on a woman and as my audience, because even though none of them have children yet, it made them think about what they're going to do someday when they do have children. How did my audience respond? I think my audience responded great. After I performed my speech, we sat around and talked for probably 10 more minutes, and they were shocked about some of the information that I shared with them, and each one of them said that it made them want to breastfeed their child when they decide to have children someday, so that made me feel really good. It was fun to talk to them about how it changed their perspective on breastfeeding, because they knew about breastfeeding, but not so much about all the information that I shared. And it was fun to talk to them because we determined whether they were breastfed or whether their siblings were breastfed. So it was just really fun to talk about, because breastfeeding doesn't get brought up in a friendship really, because we're not super young, we're adults and don't talk about if we were breastfed as a child. So that was really fun. It really brought a conversation out of my speech. What do I feel my strongest persuasive argument was? I think my strongest argument was the baby being breastfed helps them fight against cancers and diseases. I think that if there's something that you can do to help your child later in life to stay like away from cancers and diseases, why not help them? So I think that was definitely my strongest argument in my speech. The next question was, did I have solid logos in my presentation? And I think I did. I had a very strong argument to where my audience was intrigued and listened and learned and felt good about the presentation. I shared brochures with them in the end to help them even gain even more information about it, even though they don't have children yet. I think that just reading those magazines and brochures and hearing my speech will definitely make them think about me and the speech when they do decide to have children down the road. What did I do in my speech that worked? I feel like in my speech, talking to 3 women was definitely my strong point because it made me feel more comfortable because I knew that they were definitely going to listen to me the entire time because it is something that they might do someday. If I was talking to men, they might listen, but they might not be persuaded into doing it because they don't do it. What didn't work in my speech? The main thing that I don't think worked well in my speech was the space in my area that I decided to do my speech in. I luckily saw myself in the camera, so I saw if I was like out of the picture or in the picture, you know, so I just had to make sure that I stayed in that. I think that was my biggest problem in my speech because I was doing it in a small little area. I had to make sure that I had plenty of room, but actually after I actually started doing my speech, I had to make sure that you could see me when moving from side to side. The next question was what areas I can improve in. Something that I think I can improve in is finding even a better room and a better space with good lighting when doing my next speech. I feel like I'm super confident and never nervous because I know who my audience is that I'm performing to, but once I start, I instantly freeze up and like I mentioned before, what I performed in front of the mirror by myself doesn't go as well as when I'm standing in front of my 3 audience members. So I just have to make sure that I practice and know my structure and know what I'm talking about. My connection with the reading that we've had was from chapter 14, page 103 and 104, and it talked about how persuasive speaking can end up being way more complicated than you expect. After you start doing your research, you realize that there are some pieces of information that might go against your topic, but you have to make sure that you stay on task and stay in a persuasive speech and not an informative speech, because I had my audience members and there was information that I found that could have gone against the benefit of breastfeeding, but I was doing my speech on breastfeeding is good for the baby, so I had to make sure that my audience continued to be persuaded and doesn't turn into an informative speech. So that was my connection with the class reading, because that reading talked about what you can do to avoid turning it into an informative speech and how it is much more difficult than what you think before you go into your speech. So that is my reflection vlog. Thank you for listening.